That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hey guys, current me, oh my god, can you believe it? Alex from Thanksgiving 2025, right now, currently, me, instead of a video from me back from June, here I am. The only other time you see real-time me really is when we do my Expanding Universe podcast, which I've been doing for a little bit now, where I'm going through the entire Expanding Universe, mostly with some hiccups and some alterations, publication order. When I first started my channel, when I first started really turning into what this channel would become, it was peak, I know the scary word, COVID. I was stuck at home, didn't have a job, had nothing better to do. So what did I do with my time? Well, I got into the Star Wars Expanded Universe, which was a collection of short stories, young adult novels, full-on novels, comic books, short stories, I might have said that already, even children's books, TV shows, video games. You see, the Expanded Universe was 30 plus years of continuity. It was all meant to be canon. Now you will hear people for time and time again argue and belabor the point that it was never canon, yada yada yada. I have videos that disprove that. It was canon. Which is why when Disney bought the rights in 2013-2014, they decanonized the Star Wars Expanded Universe and labeled it Legends, as they did not wish to be beholden to the stories of the past. But as we've seen time and time again throughout the new Star Wars canon, which no shade to it, is perfectly fine. If you like the new canon, that's great. People to this day tell me that Andor is one of the greatest pieces of Star Wars media of all time. But even with that, I have not watched it. I'm a very stubborn person, but from what I do know about it, they do use something, shocker, that came from the novels first, which is the corporate sector. All the way back in the 80s with the Han Solo trilogy by Brian Daley, which I just actually went over a bit ago on my podcast. Other things, like, well, go right back to The Force Awakens, and a stormtrooper turned good. Where have we seen that before? Oh, right, the Dark Forces video games with Kyle Katarn, a stormtrooper turned mercenary, turned rebellion leader, later turned Jedi Knight. Palpatine returning. Now, I'm not going to belabor the point and argue as if that was one of the better parts of the Expanded Universe. It was certainly rocky. But then again, it was handled expertly better than what you got in Rise of Skywalker. Now, we can do this all day long. Ultimately, if you enjoy the new canon, that's fine. The only other big mention I must, of course, say is Thrawn himself, who first got reintroduced into Rebels and had some new canon novels written by Timothy Zahn, which were meant to bring him into the true truth, the true fold of the universe. All that to say, today is Thanksgiving. I am thankful for all of you. All the people that are subscribed to me because of the Star Wars Expanded Universe. All those who subscribe to me because I've kind of switched directions and just started talking about literary fiction in general, whether that be contemporary fiction, classical literature, fantasy, or other sci-fi material. I've gotten new subscribers just from that. But I want to encourage you, because I saw a video just the other day by a couple people. I forget the other guy's name. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. But he mentioned the Thrawn trilogy. And there's this wonderful lady that I like to call the internet book grandma. Hold on. I have her name. I just have to look at it. I just watched a video by her today. Her answering questions. Nerdy Kathy. She too mentioned the Thrawn trilogy as something she adored. And many people to this day claim it's the sequel trilogy we should have gotten. Now, I don't really care which way you stand on the new canon or not. If you like the new Disney stuff, from Mandalorian to the sequels to Andor to Book of Boba Fett to all that stuff to Ahsoka, all these things, all the power to you. I'm glad you enjoy that. To those of you who just love Star Wars and want more of it, regardless of its canonicity, or especially to those of you who have been disappointed with Star Wars for a long time now, I want to offer you a solution. The Star Wars Expanded Universe got me through the period of COVID. It has shaped me for a long time since I started getting into it. You know, I can say without a doubt, I have dedicated 2 years of my life to reading the entire Star Wars Expanded Universe. And I think I can say with absolute clarity and certainty that I've read about 90 to 95% of the material. 5% being like source books and RPG guides and things that have little nuggets of information that I may have missed. But if we're talking stories, if we're talking literary fiction written by an author with a plot, with a theme, with sometimes lyrical prose, I've read it all. I promise you, I have read it all. Outside of Escape from Dagu, which is hiding somewhere in the hemisphere. Maybe. I've read it all. But anybody new who might want to get into the Star Wars Expanded Universe, it might seem abysmal, just terrifying, trying to work your way through it, as there are hundreds of novels, millions of short stories, bajillion bunch of comics. There's so many ways and avenues to get into the Star Wars Expanded Universe that it's hard to know where to start and where to go, especially if you are a booktuber or just somebody who likes to read in general, and you're not going to do what I did and dedicate 2 years exclusively to the Star Wars Expanded Universe. If you're not an absolute nerd like me and aren't willing to do that, that's okay. I'm here to help you make that decision. But we're not going to start with the Thrawn trilogy because every single person does that. We're going to be original here. But really, it is a lot more simpler than you think. The only time it gets really complicated is New Jedi Order and beyond. And we will get there. But we're not going to start there. Let's start with those of you in Star Wars who have always been interested in the ancient past. What happened long before the movies? What were the Jedi of old like? Well, I've got your solutions. And to be honest, it's not a novel. Let me just say, there are comics called Dawn of the Jedi, which are like very early Jedi. They're not even called Jedi yet. The comics are okay. The novel associated with it, in my humble opinion, kind of poopy. If back in the day you used to play the MMO SWTOR, listen, there are some decent ones. I don't think there's a single novel in the SWTOR era, that basically novels that are connected to the MMO, that are truly worth your time. Maybe Deceived by Paul S. Kemp, but you have to be a really big fan of the MMO, or at least be a big fan of those cinematic trailers they made back in the day. So if you are a fan of the MMO, I would recommend Deceived. If not, I'm here to offer you the solution, which again is a comic book, not a novel, easier to get into, which we're going to start with. Let me get to it, if I can go find it. The Tales of the Jedi, started by Tom Veitch, and later on contributed by Kevin J. Anderson. So, I'm here on Reddit. I'm here to just show you a couple art pieces, okay? Look at this. Real Star Wars, okay? All right? Look at that. Look at this. Right? These are covers. Look at this. Look at this. Do you see this? It is beautiful. Keep going. We've got Ulick Qualdroma, Nomi Sunrider. His fuck. Sorry, my bad. His brother. What's his name? I'm a terrible fan. His brother, though. Oh my gosh, beautiful, beautiful. This is XR Kun, very important. Actually, fun fact. So, it goes Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Jedi: The Freedom Nad Uprising. Which is the one after that? Tales of the Jedi. There'll be guides online that will help you go through. But then there's Dark Lords of the Sith. Also the Golden Age of the Sith, which is like a kind of a separate thing. It is connected, but you don't have to read it. It's like 1,000 years prior to this. You don't. It's not necessary. You don't need it, but it is a part of the whole shebang. And ends with redemption. But Exar Kun, funnily enough, if you like the prequels, get this. Exar Kun was the first person in any form of Star Wars media to carry a double-bladed lightsaber and was a Sith Lord. George Lucas did not read every novel, just we'll be frank about that, but he did read every single comic. And he liked the idea so much that guess what? Darth Maul got a double-bladed lightsaber in the films. Symbiosis of these two forms. Another beautiful thing about the Star Wars Expanded Universe is just the fact that we could have other people play in George Lucas's sandbox. George Lucas had to read the synopsis of every idea and either say yay or nay to it. He didn't necessarily deeply involve himself with every project. Like I said, he did read all the comics, we know this. But still, there was a certain level of authority because George would say yay, nay to any given plot, any given story. But it would also add unique voices to the world. But Exar Kun is a phenomenal villain in these comics. Look at this man. Dave Dorman, absolutely one of the greatest cover artists of all time. I mean, look at this. Look at this stuff, man. Look at Nomi here. Look how awesome she looks. One of the best female characters in Star Wars. Look at this. Tell me you don't want to read this right now. Okay? And that's just for Tales of the Jedi. We also have to to cap off that era, we have Tales of the Jedi Redemption, which, as I've always liked to claim, is Star Wars The Last Jedi done correctly. That's all I need to say. But it's one of the most moving pieces of Star Wars fiction you can read. If you've gone through the entirety of that catalog of the Tales of the Jedi, which, by the way, F Disney for also making a new show of the same title to make searching up these comics in Google even harder. I mean, they still pop up, but it's annoying that the show is going to pop up first. But to cap it all off, if you've been reading all those comics and you finish with Redemption, I dare you not to at least shed a single tear. Okay? Maybe you're a fan of the video games. Maybe growing up, you played KOTOR 1 and 2 by BioWare and Obsidian. Well, I have another comic series for you set a little bit before the events of those games. And that is Knights of the Old Republic by John Jackson Miller. They go 1 to 50 issues, and then there's a stupid 6-issue series titled War that takes place after. And this doesn't require really any knowledge of the games. It does have cameos from characters from the games and a rather semi-important role of the main antagonist of the first video game being a kind of ally in the comics. But here, I want to give you this. I'm a little biased because back like a year or two ago on YouTube, I did have some people basically come to me going, "Hey Alex, every time we read this comic, we hear the main character, Zane Carrick, we hear your voice speaking through. We think your voice is perfect for this character. Can you please do a thingy? Can you do this little YouTube video and speak your voice as Zane?" So whenever I read these comics, because of that, now I tend to think of Zane as me. But that being said, Zane is a Padawan. Also, these comics all take place after Tales of the Jedi, and they do make slight references, and so do the video games, to those comics. But Zane is very average. He's not particularly powerful in the Force, and he's not a particularly good student either. He's trying to capture a criminal, fails miserably. He is late to a party he was meant to arrive with his other fellow Padawans with his masters. When he finally reaches this party, he finds every single one of his fellow students dead, butchered, and standing above them is all of his teachers. What's going on? Who knows? But now, because he ran away and saw the crime, Zane is being granted as guilty for the crime of murdering his classmates, even though it was these mysterious teachers. What's going on? If that doesn't intrigue you enough, that's the first issue. This series is consistently compelling, dramatic, funny as all hell. Griff is one of the funniest side characters of all time. And if you like the video games, but you don't really need it either, Knights of the Old Republic is the comics for you. Absolutely. To cap off the Old Republic era, if you are interested in periods before the films, then I offer to you the trilogy by Drew Karpyshyn, Darth Bane. Darth Bane is a trilogy that establishes the rule of two. The rule of two is essentially, because before that you'd have, a couple like top dog Sith Lords and a bunch of minor Siths, But a lot of times they would fight with each other on top of fighting the Jedi. Darth Bane gets the idea that perhaps there should only be two, because too many Sith weaken them. There should be one master with power and an apprentice who craves the power from his master. And once the apprentice feels he or she is sufficiently learned everything they can from their master, they should strike down their master. And of course, the master should not feel any disgust or betrayal from this. They should expect this. They should feel proud. And obviously, fight for your life. Fight to the death. If your student was unable to surpass you, unable to beat you, well then, he would not have helped the Sith, so he was not worthy. And you get to keep on and find a new apprentice who will one day kill you and make the Sith grow stronger. And that's basically the idea of that. There's a lot more to that, but that's what it establishes for the universe as a whole. But it is written so well. Darth Bane, it is quite fascinating. There are many stories which will do this way better in terms of making bad people entertaining to read or being able to root for. But what it does is it never makes you fully agree with Darth Bane. It never fully makes you be completely in his shoes. He's always kind of in the wrong. There are just people who may come off as worse than him, so you kind of root for him, especially in the first book. But we also get one of the best female characters in all of Star Wars. I have to do another top 10 list someday because it always changes. But Darth Zana, his apprentice, who also was one day supposed to get her own novel, which never came to fruition, very sadly so. I would have loved to see it. But Drew Karpyshyn is one of the best writers, especially for this era of Star Wars. So if you want to know about the ancient past, I think I've established for you quite a few beautiful examples of things that you could check out that will deepen and enrich your Star Wars universe experience. And the great thing, too, about the expanded universe is no matter where you go, once you start doing it, it really helps fill in this universe and make it so much more grand and vast than you thought possible. I mean, I genuinely love the Star Wars Expanded Universe more than I love any of the films. That's a controversial opinion among some of my friends, but it is absolutely true. Yes, without the films, these books, these comics could not exist. But they make the world so much richer and so much more interesting than the films ever could. So, and then you try watching the films again and you go, wow, all this vast history. But okay, maybe you don't give a damn about the ancient past. Maybe you just want to focus on the here and now, the things that you actually do know and care about. Well, assuming you're my age, you grew up with the prequels, so let's start there. If you want, because he's ever so famous among those who don't actually read the Star Wars Expanded Universe and only read that one trilogy, if you want a story with Thrawn set before the events of Episode 2, well, Outbound Flight is the novel for you, also by Timothy Zahn, and Anakin and Obi-Wan are in it. They're not the main focus, but they are in it. If you want a story set before Episode 1, I really, truly only have 2 answers for you. One of them is Darth Plagueis by James Luceno. If you read that book, you will never look at Episode 1 again. It will forever change your perception of that film. Forever. It's also just incredible. You ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? You haven't until you've read this book. But on top of that, truly getting to see Palpatine. Let me just say, he didn't have the easiest childhood, but this guy, listen, I understand we're in an age of grim dark and gray morality and all this stuff. You know, I mean, I think George R. R. Martin really popularized this. But sometimes people are just bad for the sake of being bad. Palpatine did have an abusive father, but he was also a little poopy head from the get-go. His father didn't help matters, but bro was already on a bad state from the start. That being said, his interactions between Darth Plagueis, the political machinations. You want King's Landing, Game of Thrones in space? Darth Plagueis, with James Luceno as Plagueis and Sidious try to rise ever higher. As I said, if you read this and then go on to reading, or go watching Episode 1, it will change your perception. There are other good things around this time. You know, I think Shadowhunter is also pretty good, but these are all deep dives for if you truly get into the Expanded Universe and you want to read everything. And I don't think you need it. Darth Plagueis, I think, is a must if you want to get into Star Wars Expanded Universe and you really love the prequels. The other thing I would say, though this might be a bit more pricier, because for some reason, these have not been reprinted. Jedi Quest we have, which we'll get to in a second, and The Last of the Jedi have all been reprinted. These were YA novels that came out with Scholastic, but Jedi Apprentice did not, for some reason. I don't know why. So that might be a journey of itself just to acquire those, unless you can find them illegally online, which I will not say here or there whether or not you should do such a thing. But if you can, you should. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But the second choice for this before Episode 1 period is Star Wars Jedi Apprentice. Star Wars Jedi Apprentice is like a 15-16 book young adult series that focuses on the relationship between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn before the events of Episode 1. Now, you might think this is YA, it can't be that good. I promise you, you can hear Liam Neeson in some of these lines. Obi-Wan, getting to see him younger, more around like Anakin's ages. It is interesting to see the dichotomy there. And the relationship between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan doesn't go exactly how you would expect for a lot of it. And the villain, Qui-Gon Jinn, had an apprentice prior to Obi-Wan. He went down a dark path. Qui-Gon doesn't really want another apprentice. Tension, friction. It is, not all of them are bangers. Some of them definitely feel YA. But the vast majority of those books for YA could stand the test of time next to some of the best Star Wars books out there. So if you loved the dynamic between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn, and you wanted to see how they got to where they were at in Episode 1, Jedi Apprentice is the series for you. Following that, within between Episode 1 and 2, I really only have 2 suggestions for you. That is Jedi Quest by, again, I mentioned Outbound Flight. That would be in this spot too, by Timothy Zahn. I would also recommend Jedi Quest, another YA series, which was written by the same person, Jude Watson. It was started by Dave Wolverton in Jedi Apprentice Book 1, and then it switched over to Jude Watson. But Jedi Apprentice, since it's written by the same lady, you get very purposeful parallels between Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Anakin, and the different dynamic and how that works. But if you want to see Anakin from Episode 1 turn into Hayden Christensen, this is the series for you. If you want to see their dynamic, this is the series for you. I do think it is weaker because we already fairly know what the dynamic is between these characters because we got 2 films with them. Whereas Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan, there was a lot to work with. I still think there's some beautiful moments to be had in the Jedi Quest series. Not to mention, and you can get these on Kindle now for dirt cheap, instead of having to hunt down these copies because they haven't been reprinted for Jedi Apprentice. But Episode 2, and this is part of the fun of the Expanded Universe too. In Episode 2, there's a scene very early on where Obi-Wan and Anakin are going up this elevator to go see Padme. And Obi-Wan says, "Reminds me of the time I rescued out of that nest of gun dogs." You can actually read that story in Jedi Quest. And again, that's another beautiful thing because then you get to go, oh my god, when he says the line in the movie, I read it, I know what he's talking, I saw it, I lived it, That's fun. That's great. The other thing I would truly recommend around this time, because I don't think there's too many amazing novels in between this era, but I would definitely say, if we're not counting the novels, then, well, the Republic comics. Now, it got redubbed into the Republic comics, but basically these are the comics that focus on Asherod Het, on Kiara-Mundi, on Quinlan Voss, which was a comic character first, and Aayla Secura. George Lucas liked her so much she popped up in Episode 2 and 3, but she was originally a comic book character that he did not create. So fun little tidbit there. But these comics are absolutely incredible and are absolutely worth your time. And we'll get back to those Republic comics, especially as we head toward the Clone Wars. But that's what I recommend in between Episodes 1 and 2. Now we're going to move on to that spot, that big, gigantic, all-encompassing spot in between Episodes 2 and 3. The Clone Wars. Again, we're going to start with the Republic comics. So issues, what is it, I forget what it is, 20 onward become Republic. And this is now the Clone Wars era comics. And these are probably the best thing to come out of the Clone Wars era, if I'm going to be abundantly honest. I think most of the novels miss in this period, or in terms of truly trying to get you to experience the greatness of the Star Wars Expanded Universe, I don't think you're going to get a lot there from the novel standpoint, but the comics will have you covered. From Quinlan Voss to Anakin and Obi-Wan, so much more. If you... Listen, I have my gripes with the Filoni Clone Wars animated TV show that came out. It's okay. I have a lot of flaws with it. But those comics, I don't care if you love Filoni or you don't, or if you love Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, the one from 2003, I don't give a damn. You will love these comics. They are so, so good. I recommend them. If you're going to read anything in this period, read that. But if you are a staunch novel person, I do have some recommendations for you. And with that, I offer you Yoda Dark Rendezvous by Sean Stewart. Now, Despite the title, Yoda is not the main character. There was a mandate by George Lucas that Yoda could never be the main character. He can never be the sole focus. You can never be inside his mind. You can have him in a story, but he cannot be the focus. So they made their ways around that. But this will get you to perfectly understand Yoda in this time period and Dooku. I won't spoil anything, but the end of the book has one of the most phenomenal conversations in the Star Wars media between Yoda and Dooku. Almost to the point where had circumstances and stuff not interfered, had I not known that this was tie-in fiction and that episode 3 had to happen, it really seemed like there was a chance that Dooku might change his mind. It's some powerful stuff, especially for tie-in fiction. Maybe you want something set right before episode 3. I got you. That is Labyrinth of Evil. Again, by James Luceno. Also, might I mention, I didn't show this before, but Darth Plagueis, they changed the cover for the re-release of the Essential Legends collection, but it doesn't hold a candle. Look at this. Look at this. And tell me you don't immediately want to read that. I know you. I know you do. Don't lie to me. I know. Sorry for the color change going on there because of what I did. I went from like orange to normal again. Don't mind that. But it's rad. I would also recommend, we're now ending the Clone Wars era just kind of, but the episode 3 novelization by Matthew Stover has some of the most purple prose you will ever read. It's not for everybody. It can be a little much at times. I will say Matthew Stover's probably even above James Luceno. I just think he's very good at connecting things and making good stories. But his prose, I wouldn't exactly say are super exquisite. But Matthew Stover, I would say, he teeters the line between making his tie-in fiction just feel like literary fiction, just feeling like works of art in themselves that aren't, he's really good, in my opinion. Speaking of which, I'm not the greatest fan of it, but I'm also a biased person. Do you like Mace Windu? Going back to the Clone Wars for a second. Shatterpoint by Matthew Stover. It is kind of like the Heart of Darkness in space. That's all I can really say. I was not a fan of it. It's very popular among many people, so that is also something to check out. But yeah, the episode 3 novelization, again, if you didn't like the prequels, if you thought the prequels were bad or that the stories were really good but the execution was bad, read this novel. I don't think it fixes everything people like, oh, it's so much better than the movie. I think it's a nice companion piece. I think if you watch the film and have this book in your mind, I think it does overall enhance the film and make it way better. Okay? Maybe you don't like the prequels. Maybe you don't really want anything revolving around the prequels. Maybe you only like the original trilogy. Well, I got 3 novels for you that don't require anything really from you except to have seen the films. So first off, we've got the short story collection called Tales from Mos Eisley, which was edited by Kevin J. Anderson, but has a bunch of different authors. Do you remember the cantina scene? Don't call yourself a Star Wars fan if you don't. From episode 4. Okay, that one. Many of those aliens have a fantastic story to be told. And again, one of the beauties of getting into Star Wars Expanded Universe, you can read that book, you don't need any knowledge of anything except the movies. You read that book, you read those characters, and you immediately go find that movie and watch that scene. And you get to go, I know who that guy is. I know what that guy's about. I know about that. I know what that alien's doing. It's a fun experience. It's part of the beauty of the Expanded Universe. Or maybe you like Empire Strikes Back and you want to know more about those bounty hunters. I mean, we only saw Boba Fett do anything. What happened to the rest of them? Well, Tales of the Bounty Hunters. Again, a short story for each of the bounty hunters we saw in that film and why they never made it to take down Han Solo. Lastly, again, no prior knowledge needed. You don't need anything except the films. Tales from Jabba's Palace. You ever wonder why that fat guy was crying over the Rancor after Luke Skywalker killed him? Read this novel, and you'll find out. Again, loads of fun, loads of imagination. And all it requires is the movies. Besides one story by Timothy Zahn, which I think puts Mara Jade into the events of Episode 6, which, yeah, well, anyway, Mara Jade is the whole thing that we will get to in a moment. But also, if you wanted stuff in between the movies and everything, if you love Han Solo, if he's your favorite character from Star Wars, then I can't help but absolutely positively recommend to you the Han Solo trilogy by A.C. Crispin. It is fantastic. It is a fantastic trilogy. It really expands Han's life, really expands a lot of other things. It takes a lot of things from Brian Daley's Han Solo trilogy, which came out in the 80s, which I really enjoy. They're not the best thing ever. I just discussed them on my podcast, Publication Order. And she uses a lot of that stuff in her stories. But those were kind of constrained by the fact that it was the 80s and there was a mandate that you cannot, tell anything, super crazy. It has to just be more adventures of Han from the films, but before he had his character development, basically. But we get a very young Han Solo in the first one. We get a lot of cool things in the second one, and a lot of great things in the third one. And it is the only book which allows me to believe that anyone else could be the lover of Han Solo other than Leia. And they introduce her in this series fairly well. But I think if we're talking about the original trilogy, those are the books to talk about. I also completely forgot to mention if we're going in between episodes 3 and 4, Death Star, very fun novel. If you want a little bit more morally gray in your Star Wars, well, there wasn't just bad people in the Death Star, and you read about that in Death Star, and it's a little heartbreaking, not gonna lie. So that's a novel to read. But what I meant to mention, which I completely glossed over, but this one is also a bit more popular, even in the booktube sphere, where people know about this one, which is why I was more hesitant to talk about it. But if you were a bit disappointed with the TV show of Kenobi, or maybe you weren't, but you want more of stuff like that, Kenobi, again, by the same guy who did the comic book for Knights of the Old Republic, John Jackson Miller, for Kenobi, would have been an absolute amazing 8-episode miniseries, kind of like True Detective, a bit lower budget. I mean, obviously it's gonna have a high budget Star Wars, but a bit lower budget. Despite the title, Kenobi is not the main character. It's actually kind of like a Western. Kenobi is the retired cowboy coming into town. We mainly focus on this moisture farmer family. Her name happens to be Annie. That immediately, in the heart, the moment Obi-Wan learns that, what's your name? Annie? Ow. Ouchie. Ouch. You want to learn more about the Tuscans? Kenobi. Okay? And he doesn't need to leave the planet and completely go against his, freaking mandate of watching Luke. Okay? But he's also still a Jedi. So he can't just sit back and do nothing. It's a phenomenal novel. It also deals with his trauma and grief over everything in episode 3. If you want a novel right after you finish episode 3 to read, Kenobi's your go-to. Now here's the most challenging bit. Oh, also, if you wanted something in between episode 5, very famous novel, we have Shadows of the Empire by Steve Perry, which is right here. Oh. Yeah. Shadows of the Empire is a story set in between episode 5 and 6, while Han is captured by Jabba. And we get introduced to a new villain called Prince Zizor. This was also an N64 video game. It also got its own soundtrack. So, not my favorite thing in the world, but I thought I'd be hard pressed not to mention it. But the biggie, the big shebang, the big bang for your buck, the big thing that really gets you in the thick of it is everything after episode 6. Were you disappointed with the sequel trilogy? Did you want a better story after you finished episode 6? The novels post Return of the Jedi. Now again, people always mention the Thrawn trilogy, which even on the back of its book titles was dubbed 7, 8, and 9. And of course, yes, I can't help but mention Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy, because it really does feel like a natural progression of the films. It really does feel like that. We have a new villain who is not a superpowered maniac, but is extremely smart and is always one step ahead of everyone, with the introduction of Thrawn. But also a mad clone named Jorah Sabioth, who you will have met if you read Outbound Flight. Everybody's talked about it, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But yes, it is absolutely worth your time if you want to get into the Star Wars Expanded Universe. But let me ado you with something else. Truce at Bakora. If you just follow, there's a timeline in these books that tells you, at least of the novel list. It doesn't include the comics and everything, but just the novel list. Truce at Bakora by Kathy Tyers. It's not the best thing ever, but if you want, because if you love the Cosmere and you love connections, or you love Stephen King's multiverse and all that stuff, everything building from the first book set after Return of the Jedi, moving forward from the X-Wing books to the Thrawn trilogy and everything else in between, it all builds up to New Jedi Order, which is a 19-book series written by a bunch of different authors to tell this grand epic tale. But we'll get there. So we have Truce at Bakora by Kathy Tyers. It may not be it's not the greatest story of all time, but it is a pretty solid fun time, and it takes place a day after episode 6. So all you have to know is the films to get started. And we also have the X-Wing books by Michael Stackpole and Aaron Alston. These books focus on the X-Wing pilots. I mean, if you love Wedge, or if you want to know more about Wedge, this is absolutely the series for you. It's a different angle of Star Wars. Instead of focusing Jedi, now we get to focus on something different, on some pilots. It's kind of like Top Gun Maverick in space, if you wanted a comparison. It's a lot of fun, though. I personally prefer the ones by Alston more, but yeah. Don't read Starfighters at Adamar or Mercy Kill till way later. But as I said, there'll be a timeline in each book that you buy that will help you with that. There's also, again, would be remiss if I did not mention, Dark Empire, which you would read after the Thrawn trilogy, by, again, Tom Veitch, the same guy who did the Tales of the Jedi stuff. In this, Palpatine does in fact return. Now, it's still not the best story ever, but I'll tell you what, the art, I don't like the coloring, but the art is still phenomenal. And despite me not liking Palpatine coming back, it's handled infinitely better than what we got in the films. Okay? So, it's also one of the last visual media you're really going to get in that time period. Okay? Let's move on. I also forgot to mention Dark Times, which is kind of connected to the Republic comics back when, if you wanted something in between episode 3 and 4. But again, I'm trying to give you the essential things you should absolutely read. And then we have Jedi Academy Trilogy by Kevin J. Anderson. This is where Luke, and this is also set after the Thrawn trilogy, Luke finally begins to establish his Jedi praxium. He starts to actually be a teacher, rebuild the Jedi Order, make it up, because as of episode 6, he is the very last one, so he has to build that up again. It's not like a Mandalorian where he makes the fucking little baby Yoda choose between the two. Apologies for the cussing, it just upsets me immensely. Anyway, so, yeah, there's that. And then, I'd say that's probably the last essential things. There's some other things, like the Black Fleet Crisis. You don't really need that. You don't even really need the Corellian Trilogy. Though I would recommend the Corellian Trilogy because we get introduced. And it's going to sound really stupid. And inevitably it is kind of stupid. But I think it's handled very well. Han Solo has an evil cousin who, it's not a twin because it's a cousin, but he looks a lot like Harrison Ford. except he has a mustache. And his name's Thraken. But he appears a lot in New Jedi Order, so it's not the greatest trilogy, but it may be worth your time. There's some other series I'm skipping, like the Callisto trilogy and the Black Fleet Crisis, but I don't think any of those are absolutely essential. Then you have the Hand of Thrawn trilogy, which kind of is like a conclusion to this era. Okay? Or duology, not trilogy. I think it's okay. Other people like it more. Your mileage may vary. But this is all leading up to something. Well, I would also be remiss to mention, if you can find it for a low price, it might be hard to, the Young Jedi Knights, young adult series, which focuses on Han and Leia's kids, Jason and Jaina, and their friends in the academy. Actually, I forgot to mention one that I think is extremely important because it's used so frequently moving forward, The Courtship of Princess Leia, which would be read after the first 3 Wraith Squadron books by Aaron Alston. But basically, Han's been a general and a dad. He hasn't really had time for Leia. And there's this Imperial remnant, like just because they defeated Palpatine doesn't mean that the war has ended. So they still are, battling the Empire, what's left of it. And, if Leia were to marry this royalty person, she would automatically get access to their ships. And she's always been a selfless person. So it kind of becomes this sort of romance comedy. And I really enjoyed it. But also, if you're a fan of Dave Filoni's Clone Wars, or you've played Jedi Fallen Order, the video game, and you like the Night Sisters, well, all that is thanks to Dave Wolverton, who introduced them, and Dathomir, in that very book. So if you're a Star Wars fan, and you know what those things mean that I just said, check that book out. But again, Young Jedi Knights and Junior Jedi Knights is a young adult series that was produced, and they are both phenomenal. Like, they're really fun and really good. If you can get your hands on them, I recommend it. But the big thing which does require a lot of homework, and I don't think you could just jump into for fun, which is the New Jedi Order. Again, a new threat comes into the galaxy. Unlike anything seen before, it's not the Sith. It's not a super intelligent guy like Thrawn. It is a religious, zealous, violent faction of species known as the Yusong Vong, and they don't even come from our galaxy. They come from elsewhere. But they're also unaffected by the Force. They can't use the Force, but also the Force can't be used upon them. So it's a new challenge for the Jedi Order that Luke has rebuilt, like he definitely would have after the events of the films. Not all of it is incredible. I mean, it's 19 books, and to be honest, I don't think it needed to go on that long. But if you're worried about the length of the books, just know, while the Wheel of Time may be shorter in terms of book count, in page count, I still think New Jedi Order is way shorter, because they're only like 300 to 400 pages. I only think one book in the New Jedi Order is 600 pages, and that's Star by Star by Troy Denning, who also wrote the Dark Sun books or whatever for D&D, I forget. But my standout, my favorite of the books is Traitor by Matthew Stover, which is the 13th book, which deals with Jason and his torture under the Yusong Vong for a year. That's all I can really say without getting into spoilers, but rest assured, if you make it to New Jedi Order, you are in the thick of it. Let me tell you, you have become an uber nerd, but it will be some of the best Star Wars time of your entire life. Beyond that, again, I can't really recommend the rest of it unless you've read New Jedi Order. There's no point. We have Dark Nest, Legacy of the Force, Fate of the Jedi, the next big series set after New Jedi Order. But I would not make those commitments, especially if you have not read New Jedi Order. You'll be extremely lost and confused. So don't do that. But if you don't care about all these novels set after Episode 6, and you're like, I don't want any of that, I just want something different, completely, utterly. I don't want to see the same people or anything. I want something unique. I have one last recommendation for you, and that is the Star Wars Legacy comics by John Ostrander. These focuses on either Luke's grandson or great-grandson, named Cade Skywalker, and his journey to defeat a new Sith Lord. It does make some connections to the Republic comics of the Clone Wars, which I won't spoil for you. I had read Legacy first, so I didn't have as much of an impact from the revelation. But if you are doing it in order of Republic and then Legacy, it is kind of a big reveal. But we have the villain Darth Krayt. And Cade is a lot different. He's basically the opposite of a Skywalker. He's basically like if Superman had a grandson that acted more like Batman, but also was like a druggie and full of himself and depressed and super duper uber trooper emo. But it is a great time though. It is fantastic storytelling. It's a lot of fun, and the art is just beautiful most of the time. There are some hiccups where I'm like, what the hell were they thinking? But most of it is pretty good. So that's it. Why did I make this 50-minute video? Because I'm really thankful for the Star Wars Expanded Universe and what it's done for my soul, what it's done for my heart, what it's done for my channel. And I want to spread the love. I know it. New people come to my channel have not read it. And I'm really thankful for you. And I'm really thankful for the EU. If I can help you get started on your journey, I hope this video has kind of helped you navigate your way through some interesting stories. And if you read anything, please comment on this video, comment on any video. I don't care if it has nothing to, like, I could be talking about Discworld. Text me in the comments. Hey, I just read this thanks to you and I loved it. Please, it will make my day. Because anytime I get somebody new into the Star Wars Expanded Universe, it's a good day. And yeah, it's fast. And there's a lot of it. There's so much I didn't even mention that is super good, but I was trying to give you like the bare minimum bones of what you could read to really get yourself invested in this universe. Because it is vast and expansive. And if you allow it to, if you're a fan of Star Wars, it can really touch your heart. And if you're not a fan of Star Wars, honestly, I still think this can turn you into one. It is truly something magical, truly something to behold. We got to have 30 plus years of continuity, and sure, not all of it always fit, and sometimes there were stinkers, but for 30 plus years of canon, it fit pretty well. And if you're a fan of Star Wars and you've been disappointed, get interested. Start reading these books. Start doing reviews of them. Get the word out. Get more people into it. It's worth it. Now look, I can never do what I did all those years ago and just go for 2 years straight on this journey and finish it because I'm reading so much more now. I'm reading so much more fantasy. I'm reading so much more sci-fi. I'm reading so much more contemporary fiction like Cormac McCarthy, which I would never have read before, you know, to classic literature like Wuthering Heights. Like, who am I turning into? But I'm glad I've evolved from my reading journey, but I also hope people go back and read these. I'm so thankful for the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Not only has it touched my heart in so many ways and opened up my imagination, it has introduced me to so many amazing people. From Matt Wilkins to my friend Brennan, to so many other names I can mention, like Marcel and this and that. I've met all these amazing people through my love of the EU. It's a niche community in of itself, even apart from just book talk in general and booktube. But I hope I've convinced you to some extent to maybe check some of these things out. Hopefully something in there sounded interesting to you. But I'm thankful for the EU. And I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful to exist. Life is not always easy. Life can be a Debbie Downer. It can be rough and coarse and get everywhere. But it could also be wonderful, vast, full of potential. I never thought a few years ago I'd be where I am now. I never thought, I haven't done anything yet, but I've been taking acting classes for almost 6 months now. I will be once we hit December. Will it take me anywhere? I don't know. But I feel so much more fulfilled than I did a while back. I've met so many amazing people through that who I've never met otherwise. Life is always changing. It's always evolving. And sometimes we need an escape, but sometimes also it's just nice to meet like-minded people. And I've met that through the books I've read. It's great, really. But I have to give it to the Expanded Universe, which really got me the bulk of my subscriber count. but also, shaped me in a lot of ways. And if you're still a little confused on the Star Wars Expanded Universe and you want some additional help, I'll try to leave a link in the description. I recommend. It's a 500 plus playlist, so I'm sure you'll find something of interest. But it is a journey through the entire Expanded Universe in chronological order, as best he knows how. Matt Wilkins did a whole series on the Expanded Universe from beginning to end, chronologically speaking. Phenomenal videos, short, sweet. They'll actually show you pictures of these things a bit better than I did. It's a lot of fun, and I hope, in the same way that Matt helped me, he can help you with your EU journey. Anyway, guys, thank you for everything. Very thankful for you. Thankful for the EU, and hopefully you'll stick around for more. And until next time, I'll give you a quote from Thrawn, because everybody loves the Thrawn trilogy. Also, the audiobooks, especially for the Thrawn trilogy, top notch. So if you're an audiobook person, they use the sound effects and stuff, so it sounds like a movie. Anyway. Do you know the difference between an error and a mistake, Ensign? An error only becomes a mistake if you refuse to correct it. You see, Ensign, the error has been corrected. Till next time, long live the Expanded Universe, or whichever way you slice it, as I used to do in my old reviews, legends. Bye-bye for now.